What's up, guys? It's Kellen from Oahu, and I wanted to share an idea I had with you guys. But first, I thought I would talk a little bit about my background and how I came to know that the Earth is flat. You know what? I started looking into some of the deceptions that have been pulled over our eyes. Maybe like 5 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, right when my kids were being born, and I remember just watching them, sleeping and thinking about the future and what their life would be like, when they grow up, what kind of world that they would inherit. And it's kind of being a little bit scared by seeing all the things that were going on, and I just wanted to know, what's behind all of this, because it always seemed like the media was lying to us and not exactly lining up with reality, what we experienced. So I actually kind of started paying attention when Ron Paul was around. He was in Congress and running for president. And a lot of you guys, I'm sure, maybe started with that. He exposed the Federal Reserve and concept of central banking, printing money out of thin air. And for me, it really started there, because once you understand that money can be manipulated and printed out of thin air, you realize that they can basically manipulate any sector of society. They can buy, you know, pharmaceutical industries, food system, obviously the military, CIA. Ron Paul did a lot of exposing that to all these unjust wars and military interventions overseas, and CIA drug smuggling got into that, and just basically looked at all the different ways that government could manipulate society. And one of the last things I looked into was NASA. I thought, okay, they're messing with us on all these other levels. What about space? You know, not too many people have been to space. What's going on there? And of course, that's when I came across the moon landings and saw a picture of that lunar rover, and just how ridiculous it is, and wondered why I had never seen it before. And then I started looking at some of the ISS videos and seeing the astronauts, you know, hanging in space, looking like they're in harnesses, and just all kinds of mistakes, in their NASA videos, and just realizing how ridiculous all this stuff was, and then came across the idea that the Earth might be flat. So again, when I started looking into anarchy, I wanted to know what the Bible said about it, right? So I came across 1 Samuel chapter 8, and this is a really interesting passage. If you haven't read this before, you should check it out. I'll read it to you. 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 9. Now listen to them, only warn them strongly, and instruct them in the customs of the king who will rule over them. This is at a time when the Israelites were asking Samuel basically to petition God for a king. They wanted to be like a lot of the other pagan nations and have a ruler over them. They didn't trust God. And this passage talks about basically what God said to Samuel after they asked for a king, and he's warning them about what's going to happen. So Samuel reported everything to the Lord had said to the people who had asked him for a king. And he said, "These are the customs of the king who will rule over you. He will take your sons and use them for his benefit, some to serve with his chariots, to be his horsemen, and to run in front of his chariots. Others he will assign to be captains of thousands and of fifties. And he will assign some to plow his ground and reap his harvest, others to make his weapons of war and the equipment for his chariots. And he will take your daughters to be perfumers and cooks and bakers, and he will take your fields, your vineyards, your olive orchards, the best of them, and he will give them to his attendants. He will take a tenth of your seed and of your vineyard harvest. He will give it to officers and attendants. He will take your maidservants and manservants, and the best of your young men and your donkeys, and use them for his own work. He will take a tenth of your flocks, and you yourselves will be his servants. When that day comes, you will cry for help because of your king, whom you chose for yourself, but in those days the Lord will not answer you." But the people refused to listen to Samuel's advice. They said, "No, there must be a king over us." Then we too will be like all the other nations, and our king will be a judge for us and lead us to fight our battles. Pretty deep stuff. Makes you realize how much of that came true. The Israelites asked for a king, and basically they asked for man to govern them. And the Lord prophesied through Samuel basically how they would be taxed and sent to war, and all of the fruits of their labor would go towards the king, towards the government, instead of living peacefully and harmoniously amongst themselves, and basically looking to God as their leader. So it's interesting that the Bible would warn us against advocating for a government, basically. And I don't really identify as just a regular anarchist. I would say I'm more like a biblical anarchist. I believe in seeking Yeshua first, and basically after that, anarchy doesn't really mean no rules. It means no rulers. So that how do you organize society? Everybody needs to be producing something of value, and free trade, free markets, and monetary system that's not being manipulated by central banks. And a lot of people say, well, what happens to poor people, and how do you help those that can't work and stuff? Well, if we were in a totally free society, and there was a lot more prosperity because more wealth was being generated, there'd be a lot more people volunteering their time and their services to help out those who are less fortunate. And if you think about what Jesus said, he said, help the poor. He didn't say, pay taxes to the Romans and let them take care of that for you. So, I do believe that biblical anarchy is the best way to organize society, and I think Scripture is compatible with anarchy in this sense. So at first, I thought it was pretty ridiculous that the Earth might be flat. We're all taught in kindergarten that it's like the stupidest idea ever, right? When they show us a picture or the model of the globe. But like I said, I've been looking at all these other deceptions, and everything else was proving to be a huge lie. So I started looking into it, and the funny thing is, my background is in science. I have a science degree. I've taught science in high school for a number of years, and so many of the concepts I had actually taught in like physical science before, which is really funny. But I started looking at like the curvature formula, and living out here in Hawaii is just flat water all around us, and you can see the other islands a lot of times on a clear day when you plug in the math, and you realize, okay, we shouldn't be able to see these places, according to the curvature formula that they give us. So things like that, and looking at everything that NASA does, and I don't feel like I'm spinning on a ball. Nobody does, right? Everything that we experience, it looks flat and it feels like we're not spinning. And then you look at some of the symbology and the numbers that we get from NASA, and you just realize that it's all part of the occult and Freemasonry, and whatever you call it, Jesuits, Illuminati. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And even though I was a Christian the whole time, I didn't really look to the Bible because I knew that a lot of people just don't consider the Bible to be authority these days. And I knew if I was going to convince anybody, I would have to look at the proofs. But then I started to look at the Bible because I was curious at what it had to say. And I have a copy of this version, the Dead Sea Scrolls Bible. And one of the passages that comes up a lot when people talk about whether the Bible says that the earth is flat or not is Isaiah 40:22. Check out what it says in Isaiah 40:22. I underlined it. Hold it up. He is the one who dwells above the disk of the earth, and his inhabitants below are like grasshoppers. A lot of other translations say that the earth is a circle, right? And people debate over whether it's a ball or a flat, circle. But in this version, it specifically says disk, which I think is really interesting. A disc is only one shape. You think about a CD or a DVD. So I came across several other verses that talk about it being fixed to, foundations and motionless, and just made me realize, wow, we've been, deceived on a massive scale. And so, that basically led me to understand that all government is evil, and it's all been part of a tool by Satan and the occult to deceive us and enslave us. So, I started researching things like anarchy. Realizing how ridiculous that sounds. Most people think of anarchy and think of chaos and disorder and people killing each other and stuff. But the more I got into it, I realized it's more about peace and harmony and basically voluntarism. So what am I up to these days now that I know that we live on a flat and motionless plane? Well, I've been doing a lot of the same things that you guys are doing too, sharing videos and memes and proofs, whatever, we can find to try and wake people up. Talking to, friends and family, whoever will listen. Some are somewhat responsive and some are not. They don't want to talk about it at all. I'm sure you guys have had the same experience. But, sometimes I feel like the movement is just like in a rut. We're on Facebook a whole lot. We're trying to share and wake people up as much as possible. But, in one sense, I feel like we need to step up our game and take it to another level. I want to share with you guys what my idea was. Just looking at integrating the ideas of, libertarianism, voluntarism, anarchy, and also, the flat earth, because they're so compatible. Anarchy is all about organizing society without government, without force, and anyone who knows the earth is flat knows that the government is beyond corrupt, just downright evil, right? So there's actually a conference coming up in February, middle of February, called Anarchapulco in Acapulco, Mexico. And it's organized by Jeff Berwick, who is a flat earther. And I kind of had this idea the other day that maybe I should go. Maybe I should go and take this message to a bigger platform and speak to some other truthers. And the number two objective I was thinking about, if you guys have looked into Aaron Kreshok's work, but he has done a few videos, interviews on camera, and helped spread a lot of truth. But he's also a software developer who developed, as far as I know, the first flat Earth cryptocurrency. That sounds bizarre enough for you, but you should check it out. It's called Iron Coin, and the symbol is Fe, which is the periodic symbol for iron, but we also know that's a subtle reference to flat Earth. And if you go on the website, it's a flat horizon, on the home page. It's really interesting. So, you got to check it out and find out more about what he's doing. Obviously, he wants to fund, research and more awareness about, the flat Earth movement through this crypto project. And I know a lot of you guys are very skeptical about cryptocurrency, especially, if you've read Revelation and you know about the one world currency and the mark of the beast, and it's looking a lot like it's going to be this RFID chip that they're going to force us to be implanted with. And a lot of people think that going to a digital currency is just one step closer to that. And what I would say to that is you might be right, but we already have a 97% cashless society right now. If you think about how often you use your debit card, credit card, making online purchases, we don't use cash very much anymore. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't. I think it's good to be diversified in your assets. I definitely a strong believer in precious metals. Gold and silver. That was the money predominantly used in the Bible. But if you look at where cryptocurrency is going, it definitely seems to be the future. And I know it's been going through some rough times lately. We had a crash today, but I think if you look at the technology and where everything's going, I think cryptocurrency is the future. And if it is the future, wouldn't you like to have some options? Wouldn't you like to be able to use a decentralized crypto that has been developed by a fellow truther, someone in our own flat Earth movement? And again, I'm not saying that this is what we should only use. I think it's important to have a diversity of assets and options, but um, I think what none of us want is to be forced into one option. So, I do encourage you to look into the flat Earth iron coin. And I was just talking to Aaron the other day, and he's got some really exciting news to share about iron coin. I'm not going to spoil it. I'm going to let him talk to you about what's going on. But I think by the end of the year, you're going to hear about it. You're going to know all about iron coin, just like you know about some of these other coins like Ethereum and Bitcoin, Dash, Litecoin, things like that. So again, the two objectives why I would like to go to this conference is to take our message to other truthers with a large platform, and to promote this flat earth iron coin cryptocurrency and get the word out about that so that we have an alternative to central banking. So if you like this idea, taking our message to truthers with a larger platform, and you want to see me ask Ron Paul on camera what he thinks about NASA and the idea that we live on a flat and motionless plane, then um, please support me. I'm going to be creating a GoFundMe account just to cover my airfare, because it is a long ways from Oahu to Acapulco, Mexico, even on a flat Earth map. And again, the objective is to bring the message to a larger movement within the truther movement, and to promote this flat Earth cryptocurrency so that we have an alternative to the central banking system. And I'm planning to go there to help spread the awareness about that too, and support Aaron Krashuk. So I would really appreciate your help. Um, anything you can throw down, a couple dollars, would go a long way. And now what I'm going to do is show you guys some screenshots so you know a little bit more about the conference in Acapulco, and then I'll show you what the airfare costs to get from Honolulu to Acapulco, Mexico. So here is the conference website with the speakers. And look at this lineup. Adam Kokesh, I don't know if you know who he is, but he's actually going to be running for president in 2020, and his platform is basically to shut down the government. not for president is his slogan. Kind of interesting to see what'll happen in the next election cycle if he gets any airtime. Adam Williams, he's a super cool guy. I've been talking to him recently. Great wellness coach, awesome speaker. Anthony Blanchard, he's doing some really good stuff with gold and cryptocurrency. You should take a look at him if you haven't already. Ben Swan, he got kicked out of CBS for exposing Pizzagate. Really interested to see what is going on in his life lately. We haven't heard from him in quite a while. He's one of the few truthers that was actually part of the mainstream media. Very exciting to see him there. Carrie Wedler, she does a lot of great videos. She was a former Obama supporter, and now she's doing a lot of libertarian videos with anti-media. She's pretty awesome. Dan Dix, Press for Truth. He's another great media journalist. Dan Larimer, founder of Steemit and EOS. Steemit is like an alternative to Facebook, and you should really look into it if you haven't yet. You can get paid for posting, unlike Facebook, which is taking all of our ideas and spying on us. Steemit is a really neat alternative to Facebook. It'll be even better if we can get an app for our phone. Of course, Jeff Berwick, he's the founder and of the Dollar Vigilante and Anarchist. He's also the event organizer for this conference. He's a flat earther. Really excited to meet him in person. He's a great guy. If you haven't looked at his work, you definitely should check him out. And Larkin Rose, he's a pretty famous libertarian anarcho-capitalist. Luke Radowski, he's an amazing journalist. He's been my town. If you type in homeless anarchist community run by women in Waianae, you'll find a documentary that he did. It was really well done, where he went into the homeless camp and explained how that was run, and really like his work. Mark Passio, he exposes a lot of occult symbolism in government and media. And there he is, Ron Paul, beginning of the rabbit hole for so many of us, right? He's an incredible leader in the libertarian movement. Granted, he's not as far down the rabbit hole as many of us, but for many of us, he was the beginning. He was the one who exposed government corruption and how the media slants things, and most most notably known for being outspoken critic of the Federal Reserve, and how central banks are just printing money out of thin air. And if it doesn't take too much thinking to figure out that once you have a central bank printing money out of thin air, they can finance basically whatever projects they want. They can control the media, they can control the food system, they can control healthcare, and he did such a great job all those years he was in Congress, exposing a lot of that. And then, Vid Jedlicka, he's the president of Liberland. If you haven't heard of that country, it's a new country that's starting up near the Czech Republic. It's going to be a libertarian country. It's supposed to be the first one in the world. So it'll be interesting to check out his work and see what they're doing over there. Okay, I wanted to show a screenshot of the flight that I'm looking at, Honolulu to Acapulco, February. And here is the price that currently is the lowest price I could find at the moment.